You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. Today I spoke with Stevie Wynne Levine. Stevie is the Senior Vice President of Production and Development at Mythical Entertainment. Mythical Entertainment is the company started by YouTubers Rhett and Link, which produces, among many other things, the daily show called Good Mythical Morning with Rhett and Link. She knew early what she was going to do, and she fell into the right job with the right people and has taken it by storm. Not only is she a Webby, Streamy, and Shorty Award-Winning Executive Producer, but Stevie was also named one of Variety's Hollywood's New Leaders. I think you would be a fool to underestimate her because of her youth and her overalls. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbay, and now on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Okay, here's my conversation with Stevie. Have a listen. So let's start with, you have a big fancy job.
I guess so. I am the Senior Vice President, which does sound fancy, of Production and Development at Mythical Entertainment, which basically means I'm in charge of all creative things and things that aren't underneath our COO, so everything else.
So you're running the creative side of the business.
Yeah.
That is pretty good. And you don't look all that old. So I'm curious about your path. What did you start out doing? How did you get here?
Well, I look young in overalls, I'm sure.
Just for the record, she's adorable right now in overalls, a backwards cap.
Yeah, I'm not doing my how old are you thing any favors right now. Well, I mean, how far back do you want to go?
Oh, let's go to, in high school, what did you think you were going to be doing?
I was one of those kids who always wanted to be doing something in the entertainment industry, but I think I went through that phase where I was like, do I want to be an actor? Or do I want to be an entertainment lawyer? I rember that being my,
those are your choices.
Yeah, those were the two things that I felt like, I think because at the time I didn't quite understand, previous to high school, I think I was like, well, you can either be an actor, but I totally ignored the whole, you could also be a producer or a director, or a number of these things.
Because how would you know what all the other jobs are?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I think it was, you could be an actor or you could be a lawyer. And then eventually I was like, who are you kidding? You're not going to be an actor. You should be a lawyer. And then I was like, no, I very much don't want to be a lawyer, but I already tend to produce everything that I do, so that feels the most natural for me. So
where did you grow up?
I was born in South Texas, 20 minutes from the border, so we would go to Mexico for dinner sometimes, in a place called Harlingen, Texas. And then I moved to North Carolina, where my mom's from, Greensboro, which is like smack in the middle, when I was very young and grew up there.
How did you even know that working in entertainment was a thing?
I had family in LA, and so that was like my favorite place to travel. Well, that and also, for some reason, Colonial Williamsburg, to my parents' dismay, because every time they asked where I wanted to go, I would say Colonial Williamsburg, which I think most parents are hoping for a beach vacation or something. I don't know. There's something cool about, I still want to go to Colonial Williamsburg. There's something about reenacting, being in a different world almost. That's really cool to me. I think that's what it ultimately is. But I loved everyone in costume and the food and watching the blacksmith, do his thing and just transporting yourself back into time. There's also a place in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is close to where I grew up, called Old Salem, which is a mini version of Williamsburg. And I still, when I go back home, I'm like, can we make a stop? Because I'd like to be a nerd, please. But yeah, so I had family in LA, and I just knew that it was fun and that I wanted to do it. It seemed like you could be an adult and still have fun at the same time.
Yeah, that's the trick.
Yeah.
So then did you go to college?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go?
I was in this phase in North Carolina where I was like, I want to be anywhere but here at that age.
It's like every kid graduating from high school.
Yeah. Well, there was a big, push from my high school to go to UNC or NC State or the schools in the state. And I think I was like, if I don't go to New York or California, then I'm never going to get to do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So I went to Syracuse University, to the Newhouse School, and got a television, radio, film degree. In my head, I think I was like, Syracuse, it's in New New York. I like New York. But in reality, it's this frozen tundra of cloudiness, and I would walk backwards to class because the wind was so harsh it would like
burning
hurt.
you?
Yeah.
That's funny. I was going to ask you, did you think going to Syracuse was going to New York?
Yeah. I think I did. Well, I remember like visiting the campus, and it's a very classic, like huge quad. I thought this looks like a school in movies that I like to watch, and they had a really great program for what I wanted to do, and I was just like sold immediately that that's where I wanted to go. And I visited in the spring or the summer, so I had no idea that that was not what it was like.
What was going to happen?
Yeah,
in
exactly.
December?
So I went there. I really, like, the cold and the cloudiness was a little bit too much for me, so I graduated early and rushed out to LA because I knew I wanted to be out here.
You graduated early due to weather?
Yeah. No, I graduated early due to, I credit it to an AP physics class that I had to take my senior year of high school because it got me so many credits that I wound up having a lot of credits and was able to graduate a year early. But it was the worst class I've ever taken in my entire life. I was so bad at physics, but it got
I have a
me
kid
out
in
of
AP Bio
Syracuse.
right now. It's killing her.
Yeah.
So it'll be worth it later on. I'm going to pass that along.
Yeah, exactly.
Good to know. Okay, so then you moved to LA.
Yeah, I had, in college, the year before I graduated, I had come out to LA for internships, and as soon as I did that, I was just like, the last year of school for me was just almost more of a pain, because I was like, I know that I need to be out in LA doing the thing that I want to do in order to actually be good at doing it.
It was just an obstacle.
Yeah, no, it was, I think that I was never, like, some people look back at high school or look back in college and they're like, those were my years. And I really wanted to be in LA producing things. Like, those are my years.
Yeah,
get
on with it.
So I had a professor that had this awesome, I can't remember if it was a midterm or a final, but it was just call the person that you admire, the person that you want to work for in LA. Like, call the big time producer that you're scared of calling. Like, pick up the phone and just try and reach these people. And at the time I was like, that is terrifying. Like, I don't want to do that. But I think his advice kind of made me feel like, you know what, I can get an internship with the people that I want to, and so I wound up.
It?
Yeah, so I did. So,
who'd you call?
I picked a couple of my favorite films at the time. Like, my all-time favorite movie is American Beauty, and I just went on IMDb and I looked for the producers, and it was Dan Jinks and Bruce Cohen, who at the time had a company, Jinks and Cohen, and they were on the WB lot, and called. I sent in my resume, which basically said nothing. And
student.
Yeah, and I kept hounding them. And it was this really small office. Like, it was just Dan and Bruce and their assistant at the time on the lot. And they were producing amazing things. Like, they were doing Pushing Daisies at the time. They were doing Milk when I interned for them. And I just, like, I had so much respect for the long list of things that they had made.
And they probably didn't have, like, an internship program.
No, yeah, exactly. Like, it wasn't like a Disney or MTV or something where
you're one of 3,000 applicants for 20 spots.
Yeah, I just had it in my head that, like, if I don't leave them alone, then maybe they'll have to say that I can come work with them. So
did you say, I'm just going to come out and I'd like to work with you for free?
I kind of just hounded them for a bit. Their assistant at the time, I wound up becoming good friends with after the fact. So I interned with them the summer before I graduated, and then my other favorite movie, which is funny to say because I feel like I hold American Beauty up so high, but it is 10 Things I Hate About You.
Same.
Yeah. So I went as far as looking at who had written that movie, and they're a writing team that also wrote Legally Blonde and Whip It and all these really cool things. And so I got an internship with their lit manager at the time. And it was another situation where he was working from home and didn't really have much of an intern program, and I just contacted him and said, I really like the things that you manage. And
how did you how'd you even get to the lit agent?
Just some good old-fashioned stalking, which I feel like is a little bit easier now, but I just went on IMDb and I looked at who wrote it, and then I traced it back to who they were managed by. I was trying to look for like any type of company that wouldn't be so creepy to contact incessantly versus like just contacting the writer. And it's interesting because I knew I didn't want to be a writer, so I think I was just thinking I'm not married to being a producer, and I kind of want to just experience some other jobs in the industry, so maybe I want to be a manager of some kind.
Mm-hmm. So did that exposure help you really see a lot different aspects of the business? Wait, did you intern with the guy?
Yeah. I interned with both of them, kind of alternating days for that summer. Yeah, I think that working at Jinx Cohen was more, I think I learned that I did not want to be a manager of any kind in that way. Certainly on a lit manager. I was covering a lot of scripts and started to learn like, oh no, there's a lot of people trying to be writers, and a lot of them are not very good at it, and I'm going to have to just cover a lot of scripts if I'm going to go into some kind of lit management or something like that. So I think after that experience, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a producer. I just didn't know what kind or what I wanted to produce.
Okay, so then you graduated.
So then I graduated,
here.
Came out here. I had family out in LA, which was obviously
Handy.
very helpful. And I got a job as an executive assistant for the CEO of a very small production company. And they had done he had EP'd on a couple of different TV shows, and they were doing a lot of, trying to do a lot of branded entertainment work, integrating products into things.
Can you say what company?
Yeah, it was a company called Madison Road. I think it was a very important job for me because it was during this time when everyone thought that they needed to be in digital, and I think the first step for a lot of people was, you're young, like you'll
figure it out,
you know. And so for me at the time, I just inserted myself immediately. I was just like, okay, well, if you're turning to me, then I will take charge of production. And so it was one of those things where I kind of carved out like, okay, I'm going to start actually producing these things for you, and then I'm going to bring other people on, and then I'm going to head up your digital production department, and didn't really give them much of a choice. It was like one of those things. It was like, no, you asked me to do this, and so I'm going to do it. And so
I'm taking over.
Yeah, exactly. So we made some web series type of things, like the goal always being, can we get a brand attached to this, or can we sell a brand on some kind of content?
Were you figuring this out as you went along?
Yeah, I think and even today, Rhett and Link and I joke constantly, like, we all come from this scrappy digital background. Like, it's really helpful because it's not follow this rule book. It's just get it done and do it the way that you think is the best way to do it. And that's where I started with kind of taking over digital production there. It was just, okay, I know that we need to have this video, and we need to have it by this time, and it needs to look this way, so I'm going to get the right people in the right places to make that happen. And I think it's really helpful because you're not scared to mess something up if you have an end goal that you're supposed to reach, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to reach it however I think is the best way to get there, which is what I do now still. And there's not really a rule book.
Okay, pause for a moment on this story, because I'm hearing a couple of things. One is, you kind of did the typical millennial thing that's so stereotypical, where you walked in and you're like, of course I can run this place. And you did. And you weren't waiting for permission or for instruction. And the fact that you were at a place where they let you and didn't tell you, hey kid, you don't know what you're doing, like, give it some time and get some experience. Yeah. Like, that's a beautiful combination.
Yeah, I think it was less like I can run this place, and more like at the time it wasn't the top priority, so that's what allowed me to do it. Like, it wasn't
a little under
precious.
the radar.
Yeah. I also find that the typical millennial thing is, you owe me this. I find that with some
because I walked in
some
the door.
Experiences that I have in this studio. Sometimes.
You hire millennials?
I hire a lot of millennials. No, I think it was just not waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. just
That
having
is
that
key.
attitude and wanting to own something and wanting to achieve something, wanting to make something out of nothing type of situation, because the things we were working on, they just didn't have any budget, and it was, you just had to be really scrappy, and not knowing, I think, this is what a typical rate for X person is, but instead just being like, well, this is how much I have, and I'm going to be confident in offering you this because I'm, that's all I have. So, it's either going to happen or not.
So were you creating content that complemented the other things they were doing, or were you just doing completely new
No,
things?
It was completely new. I mean, I think that for the most part, the instruction was don't spend any money and make something.
Make something great
for
free.
Yeah. Actually, the kind of my partner over there on the tech side of things, Ben Eck, is still with me today. He's here, and he DPs and directs a lot of the bigger things that we do. So I think I was really lucky in having him at the time, because I mean, technically, I'm very weak when it comes to. I'm not going to pick up the camera and shoot things, but I will pick the people who do and pick the equipment and do all that. So having him, and he's so talented, there by my side just made everything a lot easier to bring together.
So you found your people right away.
Yeah, and we had some weird, they had a branch towards the end in China, and so I remember sent Ben and I out they had a whole production team over there, but they wanted to send us out to kind of lead the effort. And
In China,
in Shanghai. And so they sent us out for a couple weeks, and there's a photo of, we had this 4-hour-long production meeting, but no one spoke English. And so I'm standing in front of this big whiteboard, and there's this whole table of people who don't speak English well, and I'm trying to, and there's no translator, I'm trying to
oh man,
communicate what we need to do.
How'd you do it?
I don't even remember. That was such a weird experience. That was a very weird company. That was a very weird time. I think there's a lot of lessons learned from working there about what I don't want to do, and it was creatively. I think right now I'm extremely lucky to be working at a place and with people that I, personally, creatively believe in and support and want to own, and I know that that's not the case for the majority of people in the industry or producers in a position like mine. So I think that was a time where it was a challenge to really put myself into some things, because they didn't creatively mesh with me. But a lot of lessons learned, and yeah, you're right. It was a great place and time sink that I fell into this. You're a millennial, do this whole digital thing.
Well, I bet you learned a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so after that job, what happened?
Actually, I met, and I can't remember if it was during or after, I met with Dan Weinstein, who is one of the founders of Studio 71, which at the time was The Collective, and that's Rhett and Link's management company, or now their MCN. It's weird because I think that if you ask any of the OG YouTubers, they were there at 2006, 2007 when the platform really started, and Rhett and Link were. But it was really 2009, 2010 where this kind of industry started to build up around the YouTube community.
Like that year Google handed out $5 million to everybody?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I've been a part of a lot of different kind of YouTube funding initiatives, which all kind of leads to me finding Rhett and Link. But at the time, there was not really anybody. It was a very small community of people who could point out who YouTubers were, who could understand how the platform worked, could understand how to fit brands into different places, or how to make money.
Yeah.
So I can't remember how I got hooked up with Dan, but I just remember having a conversation with him and feeling like, wow, you're speaking a language that I thought that only I spoke, but we're going back and forth, we're naming people, we know the same people, we're on the same page. And I did they were repping different YouTubers already at the time, so I did some freelance producing for some of their talent. Again, a situation where it was $0 and try and make something. And eventually speaking of the YouTube money that they were giving out, I was freelance producing for The Collective. I did some stuff for Red Hour Digital, which is Ben Stiller's digital branch at the time, because the guy that ran that I was good friends with. And then I was approached by a company called Mondo Media, who used to be the biggest YouTube animation channel. And YouTube had just given them a chunk of money, and they always have weird names for these initiatives, so I don't even remember what this one was called, but they're always experimenting with giving out money to different channels, and this experiment the promise from Mondo was, we will do 50 original pilots in 1 year and launch them on YouTube
That seems like a lot.
Yeah.
Like one a week?
Yeah. So I had never done animation. I don't know why. Somehow, yeah.
50 animated pilots?
Oh yeah, sorry. It's an animated company. Yeah, 50 animated, 2 to 4 minute pilots.
That sounds easy.
Yeah.
Okay, how'd you do? What happened?
So they brought me on as a production manager, and my boss headed up production for them, but it was just this one initiative that we were working on, and the rest of the company was based in San Francisco, so it was basically just the two of us down here in LA, and there were a lot of spreadsheets involved, but the way it worked was there were independent animators all over the country, animation studios all over the country, and they would pitch ideas for different pilots, and my boss at the time, Aaron Simpson, was in charge of the creative aspect of everything, and then I was in charge of all of the production management. So it was a lot of juggling, okay, we're doing a pilot with this company or this independent animator, this is what it is, this is the length, this is how much we're paying them, and then I would schedule out their entire delivery, and when we would see rough drafts and animatics and whatever it was, and then we'd get the file in and it'd go up north and they'd ingest it into the system and online it, and then we'd have to sit down and decide, this got so many views, or we really personally like this thing, can we order more? And kind of learned the timeline of animation production, and really enjoyed actually kind of having so many people to deal with at once that you are not talking to the same people over and over again.
So how many of those became series?
I can't even remember. We would do smaller orders sometimes. There would be an animator that we really liked, so we'd order 4 episodes instead of a pilot, or a pilot would do really well and we'd order a certain chunk, but I can't remember off the top of my head how many made it into series. But it was fun. It was a lot.
Kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Did you even have time to think or breathe or go home and change your clothes?
No, I think the good thing about that job was that I was only invested personally to a certain point. So, if I really liked a series, I'd want to see it succeed, but, I wasn't giving the creative notes necessarily, and I wasn't invested creatively in anything. So I think it's different for me when I'm invested creatively then that's when I,
that's more your
stay
baby.
up at night. Yeah, and so it was just a year's worth of time where I was just managing production, and I didn't have to be married to every show.
But just churning it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you just do a year there?
Yeah, that was just a year. Their funding only lasted that period of time. And around the same time, back to the Studio 71 collective of it all, their head of production gave me a call and said that these two guys, Rhett and Link, were looking for a producer for a half-hour weekly variety show that YouTube was giving them a chunk of money for. And I knew of Rhett and Link just from the community. I'd seen a couple of their music videos, and I knew that's all I knew about them. I knew that they had comedic music videos and that they were pretty funny. And so
that sounds fun.
Yeah. So I was at the time I was dying to go back into live action because I just wasn't personally invested in animation, and met with them at a coffee shop and really hit it off with them, and was naive enough to think that the amount of money that YouTube was giving them would work.
Last forever.
And yeah, interviewed a couple times with them and just jumped in to produce this weekly half hour.
So how long ago was that?
They hired me at the end of 2012. So at the time, they had just moved to LA, I want to say like a year before that. They had a show on IFC that they had just wrapped up and that didn't get a pickup for a second season. And their office was in Rhett's like little guest house at the time.
As you do.
Yeah, so like my second interview that wasn't in the coffee shop was in the guest house in his backyard. And their 2 desks were in there back to back. And they had one employee that worked kind of part-time for them that would like edit and shoot their kind of vlog videos for them on their other channel. And so so this half-hour variety show that they wanted to do, they had shot a pilot for it.
Was the set in the house too?
There wasn't a set. They would just, the show that the kind of vlog that they were shooting at the time was called Mythical Morning, but they weren't known, I mean, not many people were watching the show at that time, so they were really concentrated on music videos and sketch type of things. And they had shot a Good Mythical Morning video, but it was like a very big version with different acts and music and all this stuff. And so that's what they wanted to turn into this half-hour weekly variety show.
And that sounds like a full-on network production.
Well,
Everything you're trying to jam into there.
Yeah, so it was, not only was it a half hour, it was 30 minutes. It wasn't 22.
Right.
And, we had this really big grid. It was a 12-episode order. And we had this really big grid, and we were just trying to fill in the different blocks with different content. And I had brought over Ben, who I had met previously, and like immediately, he was the first guy. It was just like
first call.
Yeah,
on the way home from the coffee shop.
We have to have him over, because he also comes from that scrappy background. Like I feel like if people don't, then they can't just like jump right in. And I think I brought on a production coordinator, Ben, the guy that they had working for them at the time, who at the time had like very basic editing and shooting skills. And I feel like a PA, and then Rhett and Link and we made like this entire half-hour variety show for 12 episodes for 12 weeks, and we had music videos and we had guests. We had this is how weird it was. I think it was just because I didn't understand that it's actually hard to get people, that we just were reaching out to people that we wanted to have. So we had Key and Peele on, we had Thomas Lennon, we had Paul Scheer, we had Tony Hale, we had
Shut up.
Yeah, we had Tim and Eric, we had Kat Von D, which was random.
You're just calling people up?
Yeah, we were just like, we have the show, and this is the bit that we've made up for you.
Hey, Barack Obama,
and,
you want to come?
Yeah, no, and it's so crazy because now, we have a daily half-hour show, and we get a lot more views than we were getting back then, and you realize like how challenging it is to get people to come in and shoot things. So it's really crazy looking back at the show in January of 2013 or whenever we launched it.
Hey, like, how did we do that?
Yeah. But it was really, really fun and really just all time consuming, like just barely getting any sleep, I think at the end of that run, we, the three of us looked at each other and we were like, we're going to never do that again. We're just never going to take all that energy out of ourselves and treat ourselves that poorly. Like, it's just too much. Then we did it.
But
over
here we
and
are,
over and
years
over
later.
again.
You're doing the show every day, and now we're sitting in. Would you have 2 buildings here? You've grown this company.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What's the company look like now?
So we have just about 100 people. It's, right now we're doing the show that I mentioned at the time that there wasn't a set for, and it was like a daily vlog, is Good Mythical Morning, and that's our flagship daily show. And so the majority of those people work on that show. And then we have the Mythical Entertainment only side, which is more of our short form social and exec team and those people. I mean, Good Mythical Morning, so after the Mythical show ended, and I think the issue with the Mythical show is I think it was ahead of its time for the platform in a lot of ways, because we were uploading 30-minute video, and then we were uploading, we'd take the segments out and upload those as individual videos as well. So it was this weird thing where it was like, if you wanted to share something that you had just watched, you'd have to share the clip, so you'd have to find the clip, but you'd be in it was very weird. I don't know what our logic was at the time. Yeah. So we did not get a pickup for another 12, which we probably would have said no anyway, because we'd already killed ourselves. But so the guys said, well, we'd love to have you stay on with us, even though the show's over. And at the time, like, again, all three of us were all about a huge music video or sketch or something that was more narrative. But this thing, Good Mythical Morning, that they were doing was easy to produce, and they felt like at that point it was fan service. They owed it to the fans. They had like a core, very small, like tens of thousands core that would watch that show every day. And I actually really didn't want to do it. Like I said, like, I love you guys, and I would love to stay on and do music videos and higher production value things, but I really don't like vlogs, and I really don't want to produce any vlog content. And so they were like, we agree. We don't want to do vlogs or vlog content, so why don't we turn Good Mythical Morning into more of a show? And so that's when, just before the half hour, we had moved into a little studio, and then we turned GMM into more of a show. We gave it a set. We gave it more of a structure. It went from them talking about a random thing that they wanted to talk about for the day to more pointed topics or themes or whatever it was.
Can I ask, what's the business model at this point?
Still advertiser based.
Okay.
Rhett and Link actually were, I'm going to use the phrase pioneers when it comes to selling ads into their content outside of just the YouTube platform, because YouTube will sell ads on top of any of our videos and split the sale with us, but we also do integrations with different advertisers into the content, and Rhett and Link would reach out themselves to various different businesses. Yeah.
Okay, so they're doing the sales too.
Yeah. When I came on, that was definitely the Collective was the management company that was taking on sales of different integrations. But prior to that, Rhett and Link would just cold call businesses that they felt like, would this person pay for a video or a series of videos? So the model was just using the advertising from the platform or integrating different brands in. And we've done, like, I think the list of brands that I've worked with for Rhett and Link since 2012 is like 35 major brands that we've worked with. So there was a time period where we were just doing like so much branded content, and that's kind of quieted down on YouTube as of late. But yeah, so that was a model at the time. I can't remember what year it was. I think in 2013, maybe towards the end of the year, we decided, someone told Rhett and Link that like they needed to write their goals down formally. Time
to get organized.
So, yeah. So I lost the sheet of paper. I don't know where it is, but it says like 2014 goals on the top of it. And one of the goals that we wrote down was that we really wanted Good Mythical Morning to get 100,000 views per episode within the week.
And
now we've far exceeded that goal. I want to say like a year into making the show into more of a show is when we started getting like 1 million views within a 24-hour period on each episode. So we achieved our goal.
I'll say it pays to write them down. Now, how do you grow that audience? Are you doing a bunch of social media on top of creating the content, or what's the magic bullet to creating a viral video?
Yeah, I don't think there's. I don't know. I don't think there's magic. I think that it's a lot of learned creation is the phrase I'm going to now say that I just made up. I don't know. It's a lot of experimentation, a lot of doing things that we thought at the time were first for the platform, but that our audience would really enjoy. Our key demo is 18 to 24-year-old, more male skewing. And so it just so happens that it's easy for us at this point to kind of guess what might hit in that demo. But I mean, we're constantly making things that we really enjoy too. I think that's another aspect of what we do, is that we're never making content for kids, although it's usually kid friendly. We're always making content for ourselves, and we're always trying to please that main demo that we have.
If it makes you laugh, you think it's probably still going to work.
Yeah. Well, I have a phrase that I like to use that's different than the creation one I just made up.
That was good, though. I'm thinking I'm putting that on a poster on Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I watch one of our videos and I laugh and the first thing that comes to my head is, this is so dumb. That's my favorite video that we make, and I always say that the key to success is making a really dumb video in a really smart way.
Yes. That's my favorite.
Yeah, so I think that's like, when we can do that, that's really what hits home for us personally and for the audience. But we're constantly experimenting with everything that we're doing. There's not really any magic to it, I don't think.
That's a really incredible skill, though, to make something really dumb in a really smart way. Because you got to be smart to do it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dumb things out there that are just dumb. And it's a different kind of dumb, the dumb that I'm talking about. Yeah, it's just dumb for dumb's sake versus just being smart about experimenting with something. And
do you have an example? It's a really smart, dumb thing.
I mean, so many things that we do on GMM are really dumb things. Even our Will It mini series, it's our most popular series. We take something like, most recently we did, and I don't know, pending when this launches, it might be out or it might not. We did Will It Pretzel. So we take just a soft pretzel and we see if other things will pretzel. So we took Pepto-Bismol and we made it into a pretzel. And then the guys taste it to see, is it actually a good pretzel, or, does it work? Or
Will It Pretzel.
Yeah, or, we'll do things that actually will, like Will It Dumpling, we did pizza dumpling, and it was really good. And so there's a whole series of us trying to see if certain things will. And it's so stupid, and it's so dumb, but it's our most popular series, and we make the guys eat really weird things, and, the conceit of the series, I think, is a really smart one, but you're still watching two grown men eat, hamster testicles or whatever it is. So, I mean, yeah, there's a long list of things that I think are really dumb that we do that somehow have turned into magic, if that's a thing.
That's funny. Now, is there any fear that they're going to age out?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's not a fear so much as like an actual reality that is happening. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, I think that right now, especially, there's a lot of controversy with YouTube, or a lot of bad press. I don't know if, the whole Logan Paul, mess that's been in the news lately, or people's perception of YouTubers being that they're, stupid teens with no talent, with disregard for anybody else, or
eating Tide Pods,
that type of thing, that type of everything's about them and how cool they are, and look at their life, and just follow them around for the day while they do really stupid, disrespectful things to people because that's really funny. And so there's this whole perception, I think, and even in the TV and film industry, there's a perception of actors are being replaced by these social media influencers just because they have a following, not because they have any talent. There's a perception about that makes us very hesitant to call Rhett and Link YouTubers.
Except that when a YouTube talent gets in a movie and does really well. It's like, oh, they may be talented after all.
Yeah.
How about that?
Oh, and that's the thing, is it is a generalization of the platform and the people on it, but I totally personally see why people would think that. And I think that Rhett and Link are kind of the anti-YouTuber in that way. I mean, they're 40-year-old men.
They're not running around with their iPhone.
Yeah. They have a company. They've been making content and supporting their families for over a decade.
They're legit, man.
Yeah. So...
But I think people also underestimate the amount of work it takes to become a YouTuber.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's not just nothing.
Oh, yeah. I think that, I have a lot of friends that are, classically YouTubers and make weekly content, and it is a struggle for people. Even people who have done it for as long as we have, it's really hard. And with Good Mythical Morning, we're about to celebrate our 1,300th episode.
Wow.
And it is hard to come up with ideas, and especially if you're... I can't even imagine just being by yourself and coming up with so many new ideas. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of discipline. And
your creative spigot has to be on full blast all the time.
Yeah. And I think also, there are those YouTubers that put out videos that are just so bad, but they're just geared towards like that 13 to 17-year-old audience that clicks on whatever they're going to click on. And the creators don't really have a high bar for what they put out as long as they get the views. And that's just the exact opposite of who we are and who Rhett and Link are and what we do and what we put out. And
well, you can tell this is a legit organization you're running here.
Thanks.
Okay, so you were talking about how this company grew now to 100 people in beautiful downtown Burbank.
Yeah. Well, this is so we started in Rhett's guest house, and then we got a small studio down on Burbank Boulevard that was this weird, it felt like a, very horrible dentist's office in one half, and then the other half was, where the dentist lived, with his family. That's how weird this building was. But for us, it was amazing, because it wasn't Rhett's guest house.
Yeah.
So we started there, and if you look at some of the older videos, our little parking lot and shooting around that studio, it's really amazing to see that in comparison to the studio that we're in now. So now we're in a bigger studio in Burbank and have a much bigger staff of people. So the version of the show, Good Mythical Morning, that we produce now is YouTube funded. And in November of last year is when we launched this new version, which is basically the older version was like a 10 to 12 minute single themed chunk every day. And this new version of the show is 22 minutes long. There's 3 main videos, and then there's a show after the show, Good Mythical More video. So every day we launch 4 videos. And it's obviously a lot of work to put out that much content, so we scaled up the team. This is our 3rd recreation of the set, and it's much bigger. And so now we have a full-blown team here, and 2 different sides of the studio and multiple sound stages and a lot of content being made.
It's amazing. So what are two questions? What are your goals for the company, and then what are your goals for your career?
Oh gosh. I think that right now, 2017 was actually a really big year for us. We have a narrative half-hour show called Rhett and Link's Buddy System as well that launched season 2 last year. And so last year we had the new version of Good Mythical Morning. We had Buddy System season 2. The guys released a book. They did a tour. We have a weekly podcast, Ear Biscuits, and a bunch of other supplemental crew-based content that we put out. So 2017 was kind of a, wow, I can't believe that we did all of that year for us. I think 2018, we're looking kind of outside of what we've typically done. We're, continuing to make Good Mythical Morning, continuing to experiment to try and make it the best it could possibly be, to kind of expand what people's expectations are of the platform and YouTubers. But I think ultimately it's about expanding our brand off of the platform as well. You know, personally, Rhett and Link and I have a lot of interest in scripted comedy and taking something like Buddy System to a whole new level.
Like any interest in going to a network?
Definitely. I'd say somewhere where our work can be seen by a very wide audience. I'll phrase it that way.
All right. We'll interpret that however you want.
So we just, like, I think, you know, we always get excited about just making things that we think are really funny and awesome. And it's awesome to have a daily show. It's a different type of content than doing scripted work. And, you know, for a while, like I mentioned, we were really cranking out these awesome music videos that have, you know, 30 million views and took us X amount of time to make and have all these amazing visuals that we're really proud of. And I think with Rhett and Link's Buddy System, especially season 2, we were able to prove to ourselves that we can handle doing a TV show. So I think we want to push ourselves. We're always trying to push ourselves to go even farther than we went, you know, in years past. So that's the ultimate goal, I think, is just making stuff that we're happy with.
Yeah.
And then for me personally, I really feel like, and I mentioned it earlier, I don't feel like a lot of people get paid to make things that they're personally passionate about. And I am extremely lucky. I do feel like Rhett and Link and I are partners in such a way that we push each other and we grow with each other and we have the same macro level desires to make the same types of content. We find the same things funny and we want to challenge ourselves, and I'm very lucky to be at a place where I think my goals professionally line up with their goals and the goals of the company. So it's a little bit broad and ambiguous, but I think that's the goal. Push yourself creatively and keep making really awesome things.
Well, it's amazing. It sounds like you fell in with the right people in the right job, doing exactly what you want to be doing, and you're in it for the long haul.
Yeah, let's hope so.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really unusual. Really.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for young women just starting out?
It sounds cheesy, but the whole rule book thing, it just doesn't, you know, it's so limiting. I think that, like, and maybe that's one of the reasons I was itching so much to get out of Syracuse and just come back out to LA, because there's only so much that a textbook can teach you, or that even a professor that might have 1 million IMDb credits can teach you. But until you're out there and actually doing the thing that you want to do and inventing the path for yourself, you know, you're just going to be reading a textbook. So,
well, yeah, and you jumped into the frontier. You didn't jump into traditional production.
Yeah. But I do feel like the lines are so blurred that it doesn't matter. You know, I would say by the time, I think if I were graduating school right now, I think that we're in this awesome time where TV and digital is blurred and ideas are coming from everywhere and distribution so wide that you can really do what you want to do, and make your own path, as long as that you know that you can do that and you don't have to follow rules that somebody else has set out for you, I guess.
Truth. What do you make of the state of women in kind of what happened last year? It's funny because you strike me as someone who has been unencumbered by gender bias, as far as I can tell. It seems like you just shot forward and are doing what you want to do. Or let me ask that question first. Did you feel it all held back or have obstacles?
No, but I do feel like, you know, and here at Mythical, you know, my writer's room is half female. My post staff is as well. My creative producers are as well. Like, that's very important to me.
Are you making a conscious effort for that
Absolutely.
kind of diversity?
Yeah, because I feel like, especially in the writer's room, if I don't have that female voice, like, something is really missing. Actually, on season 2 of Buddy System, that was a really big push we were trying to make, and the budget was so small and the time was so limited. That is my personal biggest failure about that show, is that I did not get a woman in that writer's room. It was a very small room, and we pushed really hard on various different women that I did want in the room. I don't think don't think I've been encumbered. I do feel like you run up against, especially being a very young woman in the industry, I'm often, if it's a conversation amongst Rhett and Link's management team or executives outside of the company, I definitely feel like I'm either the youngest or the only woman in the room. And I think that comes with, depending on who you're dealing with, a certain perception of who you are or how to treat you, or, I think that there's still this like kind of at times maybe like shock that Stevie is a young woman that's walking into the room and not like an older male. But, and I think that there's this general, I think that men are given the license to be, well, they're really assertive and very good at what they do, and you don't want to get in the room with them because they, they're very good at their jobs and very confident. And if women behave similarly, they're not called such nice things. But I think that knowing that kind of takes the power out of it in a lot of ways for me.
How do you deal with that, or do you behave differently in the room, or what do you think about in the room? Oh,
absolutely not. No, I don't know what. I think it's my desire to get things done and get them done in the right way that I don't give a shit. Like, and oftentimes in meetings here, like, we'll be in a room full of 20 people and having a meeting about X, and I don't have time for somebody to amble around to try and get to the topic of the meeting or whatever it is they want to talk about. And I don't, and oftentimes maybe it is a room full of men, but I think for me it's just like, this is what this meeting's about, so I will lead this meeting and I will get it done, and I will, and there's I do not behave differently for sure. I think it's just you learn a lot about people, and women as well. Like, that's the other thing. I think it's funny because as a gay woman, I can read women a little bit differently too. So it's funny it's just interesting how different and varied people are, but how similar they can be in certain situations. Because I do also think that certain women can be intimidated or jealous by other women in power that are around them, and I've definitely had those experiences as well. But I think especially in the digital world where there are so many young people and there is a growing amount of diversity, I don't think I've been encumbered by being who I am.
Good.
Yeah.
Does it feel to you like there's such a difference generationally?
I think it used to, and mostly with advertisers, honestly. That was the biggest learning curve, because I think anyone that we are dealing with in the community obviously knows who people are and what things are worth, and the value of a video or placement in a video. I think there was a time where you were really having to, when you're talking to a brand, it was like an older man who was in charge of the money.
Smoking and drinking whiskey.
Yeah. Yes, it was Mad Men. No, and it was kind of this like, and it still is to a certain extent. It's like, I kind of have to politely educate you on what the value is of an integration in this particular piece, both monetarily and just like for your consumer base. And I feel like I'm talking to someone who's very old right now because you don't know what I'm referencing. But now actually, and for us specifically, that's really changing, and I think one of the reasons is because oftentimes advertisers who approach us, their kids are huge fans of ours, and so our shows are always on in the background at their houses, and it's also funny when people say their kids are fans, because it actually means that they're fans. So
I told my kids where I was going today, and they were like, "Oh, really?"
That's awesome.
And I bet once because just hearing you talk, you're talking to that advertising guy having such depth of knowledge about the business model and the business of it all.
Yeah.
I bet that gets you a lot of credibility pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that, again, Rhett and Link kind of being the anti-YouTuber, that's something else that I think that's why we have done a lot of integrations is, we understand the value of a dollar. I mean, we understand, you know what I mean? Like, we understand how rare it is to be in a place where you're able to talk to an advertiser face to face and get the amount of money that you know, for some people would be shocking, and to give them what they need for that amount of money. I think that's the other thing, is like we're able to deliver that value for them. So yeah, I guess so. And meet deadlines and make things look good. So that's always important.
It's all the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Can you point to one thing that you know now that you wish you had known when you first started?
I feel like there's so many things that there's not one thing that stands out, because I feel like I'm constantly learning lessons, especially like creatively or content-wise. Like every single day it's, you know, we'll put 4 videos up, and one of those videos will teach you something that is kind of ingrained in the back of your head that you're not going to repeat, or you're going to do differently the next time. Well, I think it's not being afraid to not know things. I guess that doesn't answer your question, but I think that's where, you know, leading back to the other thing that I said, it's like you don't have to know everything, and that's fine. So I guess the answer is no. There's not really anything that I wish I had known, because
you're never going to know it all.
Exactly, you're constantly learning things. So
yeah, it's funny when people go into this business thinking that they're gonna get it all, and one day they're just gonna have it nailed, when it's different every day and you're never going to.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm wondering, and I don't know if I'll keep this in, but I just talking to you, and you talked about being a gay woman in the room. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that takes away a layer of, I need to present myself in a way to still be attractive to these men. That I think...
That's interesting.
I think encumbers straight women, because we still want to be likable.
That's super interesting, yeah.
So I wonder...
I totally think so.
Because I feel like I don't give a fuck if you find me attractive or not. I'm just going to do the job.
No, I think that's an amazing point that I totally agree with. Yeah.
I wonder how much that gets in people's way.
Well, I also think that, like, just in general, insecurities get in people's way a lot.
Yes.
Because it's not like I'm going to be as sloppy as possible because I don't really care if you're attracted to me. But, like, I mean, there's no part of my mind that's, like, that has that. But you know what? At the same time, it's not like I'm trying to be attractive for, like, the women that I work with, you know?
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, I mean, that dynamic doesn't...
Because there's so much talk now about how, especially with the Weinstein of it all and the Me Too of it all, about how the gender dynamics in offices have to change. But still, some huge percentage of people meet their spouses at work, so there is still that dynamic.
Yeah.
I don't know, just these are things I ponder.
No, I think that that's a really good point. I think that, like, I think with the Me Too movement, it's astounding how long it took for it to exist.
Isn't it?
Because I don't think that it's not like subtle cases that we're talking about. Mm-mm. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, nothing's questionable about it at all. Like, it's very blatant. It's very
not, oh, you look
horrible.
To be funny.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that.
And it's interesting because I do feel like in the industry traditionally, it's not even tied to, you know, sexual harassment. Like, they're just horrible people. They're just people who abuse their power and become actual horrible people. Mm-hmm. And nothing is done about it because they have this power. And so I think that there's also just this whole dynamic of not even sexual harassment. It's just like treating people like shit and like getting away with it.
It all goes back to the power dynamic.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But I don't know if that's something that would ever be addressed in the same way that the Me Too movement is, or, you know, come to fruition in the same way, because it's a little bit more difficult to shake a finger at or to point at. But it's, and I think the two are very much tied together, because I think the horrible people do horrible things on all fronts, including harassment, sexual harassment. But
I think the more diverse voices you can get in the room, the more it's going to dissipate.
Oh, yeah. Well, I also think that this just a younger generation, like, you know, what's going on right now in the news with the kids in Florida and their voices. It's just, like, it's such a saving grace. Like, it's amazing to see that those are the kids that are going to be voting in the next election. You know what I mean? Like, and I hope that they do, because I think that we're just in this time right now where everything is terrible. everything just like, like you want to go home, you want to be educated about what's going on around you, but you also just want to shut everything out because everything couldn't be more horrible.
Except that I think that is so hopeful. And on the one hand, you see those kids, you're like, why did that not happen before now? But oh my God, look at what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
It will change everything.
Well, I think that the media is willing to give a platform to change now that things have kind of gone to hell. I think,
it gets to the point where it is so intolerable. You can't. It's either change it or we all just surrender. Yeah. And send our kids to school
I don't think. I don't think that. Surrendering, I don't think is an option for anyone, which is great. So that's encouraging.
It's the one time they haven't been able to say it's too soon, we can't talk about it, because the victims are talking about it.
Oh yeah. Well, the statistics are terrifying. It's really terrifying. I think we tweeted something from the Rhett and Link account about we specifically said school shootings this year, and I was thinking why do we specifically say this year? And then I looked up the stats for shootings just that have taken place in 2018, and it's February, and it's just that is insane.
It's ridiculous.
But I think, I think that it's all kind of tied to this, things are not okay the way that they are, and we need to talk about it, we need to speak up about it, and I think that's the one positive thing that's come out of this horribleness of the past year.
Yeah, it's incredible. We're mad as hell, we're not going to take it anymore.
Yeah.
On every front.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Stevie Wynne Levine for sharing her story, and special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or Podbay, and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters. For added features, bios of our guests, pictures, the merch, please go there right now and subscribe. I'll send you an email letting you know when a new episode comes out and telling you all about it. You can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter at Other50% and Instagram at Other50% Podcast. Thanks for listening. See you next time.